Hello comrades, Commissar Bro here today with Gladius, Relics of War. That's right, the new Warhammer 40,000 game that's coming out from Slytherin. It's actually created by Proxy Studios and published by Slytherin. Slytherin, I'm sure you're familiar with to some degree, being a big purveyor of strategy games, war games, 4X strategy games, so on and so forth. I don't know why I forgot to say strategy games there for a second, but you know, we all have our off days. Anyway, so what's special about Gladius Relics of War? Well, I'm not going to give you a review, but I will give you one on the 5th of July. This is going to be more of kind of a introduction to the game, so to speak. I've done a couple of these already, but this time I'm going to be playing with the Necrons. Also, if you happen to hear this particular sound, it's because my cat keeps jumping up on my desk. So, just go ahead and mentally prepare yourself for that. You might hear it, and you know what? I'm too lazy to edit it out. So anyway, Gladius, Relics of War. What is this game? It's a 4X strategy game taking place on a beautiful little planet that is going to get absolutely devastated by all the disgusting war that's going to be going on in it. That's right. You can kind of customize the map a little bit. It's going to be random each time. Each faction has a quest line, a story in a sense that they go through. You can actually turn off the quest if you like. You can put on a turn timer. You can adjust the landmass, the wildlife density, the artifact density, all that good stuff. You can do stuff to it if you wanna, but we're not gonna touch it. Now, again, I'm not going to give you guys a review quite yet. This is mostly supposed to be an introduction and a preview. But one thing I will say that I feel is important to mention about this game, as opposed to other 4X strategy games in a similar vein, think Civilization, is it does combat pretty damn well. And it does it in an interesting fashion. Where most games I play, I can't help but feel like the AI just rushes me with waves of units. I noticed this one attempts to be dynamic in a sense, sometimes pushing forward and pulling back if it starts to take a little bit of damage, whereas in games like Civ, they just keep coming, particularly for no reason, I guess just to scare you. But I think that's something they've done very interestingly in this game that is worth pointing out. I probably won't get to show it in this video, but just believe me, for the sake of it, it is something that happens and is really cool. So, we're going to be playing as my pasty white little robot boys, the Necrons, that's right. You've got 4 different factions in the game. You've got the Astra Militarum, you have the Necrons, you have the Space Marines, and you have me old boys. As you can see, the orcs are some of my favorite. I absolutely adore them. I haven't actually played them yet in this game. Most of my experience comes from the Space Marines and the Necrons. The Necrons being the actual army I play on the tabletop. So you can imagine I absolutely love the Necrons. They're really cool. And they're also very easy to play starting out in this game. They have a clear advantage over some of the other races. And I think everybody kind of has their own strengths and weaknesses. They honestly all play very different from one another, so you're going to have different experiences every time. The Space Marines kind of have like one city that's super powerful, and they drop down outposts throughout the entire map as they expand. The Astra Militarum is more traditional. They can actually create multiple cities and so on. The Necrons can also create multiple cities, but they can only be created on top of tombs, which are scattered throughout the map. However, they're very powerful, and the more cities they get, obviously the more they can make. One thing the Necrons do that I quite enjoy as well is the fact that they have Necrodermis Repair and Reanimation Protocol, which essentially means they heal every turn. Every single turn, it does not matter, their unit is going to heal, which is so OP, but so cool at the same time. I absolutely love it. Plus, infantry units can teleport to cities and monoliths, and so on and so forth. So that's actually a really cool ability as well, but it costs influence to use, and we'll kind of go into that as we play. So, without further ado, I've spent 5 minutes bullshitting around. Let's get into the game and take a look, see what it's got. Yeah, that's right. So with the Necrons and everything parameter-wise is pretty set. I think we're going to put some very high density, and we're going to make the map high as well. We want everyone to be high as hell. And we also want to do Ruins of Vol density. We want to make those very high as well. Ruins of Vol are essentially like the villages in Civilization. They give you various bonuses and whatnot. We're also going to add more players to the game because we pretty much want to see a little bit of combat right off the bat. And hopefully we will. I imagine we will. Combat is the primary focus of this game. Now, I am going to skip past this particular intro. I do like all the voice actors they've gotten for this game. And don't worry, I'm not shielding for myself, but I do totally do the orc, just so you know. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and click on our Canoptic Spider here. Old Necron fans will recognize that as a tomb spider, and the green right underneath him shows a Necron tomb underneath. That's right. And you know what that means, don't you, boys? That means we're going to found a city right here. Yeah, look at that beautiful baby popping out of the ground. Glorious. So, basically what the game's telling us, I'm going to disable tips because I have a pretty good idea of how to play the game at this point in time. It's just going to tell us about the various resources in the game. Keep in mind the Necrons don't have the exact same resources as the other factions. Primarily speaking, food. They don't have to worry about food, which makes sense. They're deathless metal shells. They don't need food. Instead, ore operates as their limiter unit, or their limiter piece. And electricity is used primarily for the construction of building and the production of units. So anyway, right next to us is a Ruin of Vol. So we're going to go ahead and send one of our Necron warriors over there to explore it. And to get anything out of it, the Ruins of Vol provided lightning gauntlets. Oh, glorious. But we don't have a hero unit, so we can't equip it yet. But that is a really powerful weapon, plus 50% damage. Oh my goodness. So, looking at the map, you're going to tell, right off the bat, you're going to have a lot of similarities between games like Endless Legend, Civilization, and so on. And, yeah, pretty much the core mechanics of the game plays exactly like you would imagine it to. You have research. You're going to actually research stuff. You have 10 different tiers per faction. 5 different things to research in a linear fashion. You don't have to research everything in the tier to move to the next tier, but you do have to get a couple of things. So, for example, we're going to say, well, we want to be able to create or get more ore output from our alchemic quarries. So we're going to go ahead and research royal slaves. Alternatively, we can actually get a royal pyramid, which actually builds heroes, or a hypo style, and so on and so forth. But we're going to stick with trusted slaves for now because, you know, I'm not really trying here. And with our second little warriors here, we can send them out to explore if we want to, but I will warn you, the planet's surface is downright terrifying. There's no other way of putting it. So, I mean, you can sit here and walk around and just bump into an enslaver, and that enslaver is going to enslave your butthole. They just have no shame and no respite. So it's better that you move in groups. Now keep in mind, your cities are incredibly powerful. Even this Necron city here, if someone tried to attack it, they're going to need quite a few units to be able to bring it down. It's actually kind of impressive. It can pretty much one-shot units if they come anywhere near it. So I like that. But we're going to keep our dudes together. We're going to move them together. And hopefully they won't get ambushed and completely violated together. But if they do, they do. So one of the things that we also need to do as the Necrons is we need to acquire tiles. Looking here, you can kind of see what you get out of each tile and how many build slots is in that tile. This one's got 3. Well, they all have 3. This one's 0 because, well, it's a ruins of Vol, so you're not going to be able to anyway. So we can basically choose to go ahead and acquire this tile. In doing so, it costs us influence, and it also costs us power and production time. The slave Mastaba acts as our actual building unit in this case that builds buildings. And it's got 7 production per turn. You can actually research slave mastabas further down the line and be able to produce more. But what we're going to do for the sake of right this moment, we're just going to go ahead and get this one right here, the Savannah Brush. Now, you're probably wondering what this little purple stuff here is. That's called wireweed, and you don't want to touch it. It's a total douchebag. It hurts your guys a lot. You think, oh, you know, walking through a little bit of wireweed is not that big of a deal for metal guys, but yeah. No, it is, and it will hurt you, and it will kill you. Basically, the description of this is pretty much saying it's going to eat your face, which is pretty hardcore. So, you see here, you actually see the quest. This is the beginning of Chapter 1, Scourge of the Old Ones. As the proud leader of a Necron tier dynasty, you'd never known defeat. Never until your people met the Old Ones and dared to attack their star-spanning empire. Yeah, so basically, this is just telling the story of the Necron tier, how they became the Necrons. They were tricked by the Catan while they were fighting a war against the Old Ones after they had been defeated by the Old Ones. They pretty much sold their souls to the Catan to be able to defeat their enemies and become immortal. And then they became soulless metal husks that had no emotion, and except for hate. And apparently they had that, so that's something they kept anyway. So now 60 million years have passed, and you've awoken into chaos. Signs of battle between the Old Ones' humanoid creations litter the surface, as do the ancient enemies' traps. These devastated your people upon awakening, leaving a few surviving tombs widely scattered. Through the warp storm, you can hear nothing from your overlord, says Rick. That's right. There's a Rick. Zarek. Whatever his name is. I can't pronounce it. I'm terrible at pronouncing the Necron names. You figured playing Necrons would kind of help that out a bit. It doesn't, unfortunately. So it looks like there's nothing back here. I guess we will kind of split up a little bit more. It looks like we found us some Kroot Hounds. That's something else you're going to notice a lot of. If you're a Warhammer 40k fan, you're going to be familiar with a lot of the monsters that are hanging out on this planet. You've got Kroot Hounds, Enslavers, Castellan robots, Tech Priest, Engine Seers, all manner of wacky things, like all mishmashed together in almost a humorous fashion. And I think that's actually what this game does that a lot of Warhammer 40k games have kind of forgotten about, is be slightly nonsensical, which is something I absolutely adore. But anyway, so we kind of shot at those Kroot Hounds. That's something else you're going to notice is units have ranged attacks, and then they have melee attacks. Various weapons have various ranges, but for the most part it seems you can pretty much shoot from about 2 tiles away and engage in melee combat. Now, the closer you are to your enemies, the more damage you're going to do, even with ranged weapons. Being at point blank and firing is going to do more damage than being at long range and firing. This creates very interesting scenarios, to say the least. Again, tying into what I was referring to about the combat, not just the intelligence of the AI, but the intricacies of the combat itself. You can really see, I guess, you know, with Slytherin's experience in this case of creating so many different war games, that it really helps out in the long run, I believe, in the game. So let's see, we're getting plus 40 here, plus 20 research. We could do research, or we could just acquire another tile. I'm not really happy with how that turned out for us, so let's get this forest here. Yeah, that's right. I should actually go ahead and start building stuff there, but I really want to focus that on research. We have very research-heavy areas here, and I would like to take advantage of that. And I love the little quotes that pop up. They're so precious when they talk. Glorious. And let's end our turn. So, there's plenty of stuff to talk about, I guess, but really, you're not going to see too much. The game really starts to pick up a couple dozen turns in. So what we could always do is turn this into a multiple series Let's Play where we kind of just learn the game as we go along. Again, I've played it enough that I have a pretty good idea. I've fought a couple wars and did some pretty nasty damage to my enemies. I even went one-on-one against Necron enemies, and it was a tough fight. One really cool thing is that you can take advantage of, when you're trying to take an enemy city, you can take advantage of their walls and fight against them. Taking a cue from Endless Legend, instead of cities just being restricted to one singular area, in Endless Legend and Civilization 6, you actually have it where you have districts, and as such, you can fight over these districts in the game. It creates, again, very interesting scenarios where, say, you're trying to take over an enemy city, you can actually steal that tile from them, fighting against them, using their own tile against them, and using their own fortifications. You have some really brutal, nasty battles as that goes on. So I doubt we'll see any this episode, but again, if we continue to do this, I don't see why we wouldn't eventually see some. And as we murder those Kroot Hounds, units also have experience, just like Civilization. They become stronger. In this particular case, getting more health. And that's pretty much about it. Let's see, and it increases their damage by 5% and their morale by 10%. Units also have morale in this game. It works in a very simplistic fashion in the sense that if it falls below 66%, they become shaken, lowering their accuracy by 25%. Below 33%, morale units become broken, lowering their accuracy by 50%. Basically, they just become less combat effective. They don't really get a speed bonus or anything like that. Other games, kind of experimented with, like the Total War games and so on. Pretty much units that are running away can move a little bit faster. Maybe they take more damage. I'm actually not thinking of Total War. I'm thinking of Company of Heroes. They kind of explore that thought process, and we're just going to murk that dude. That's one dead crude hound. Poor little guy. Coming up in my territory. It was his fault. I didn't want nothing to do with him. I was just going to be like, hey, boy, you can just kind of go somewhere else if you want to. But he's like, no, I want to stay here. I want to be a friend. And unfortunately for him, we don't want to be friends. We don't need friends. We're Necrons. We have no emotions after all. And I guess I really should be building towards like showing you the heroes or different unit types. But instead, I'm actually kind of just, not going to do that. And instead, I'm mostly going to explore. The first, like most 4X games, the first part of the game starts out very heavily on the exploration aspect, just kind of walking around and seeing what you can find. You'll see resources on the map. Those resources will show up as outposts. You actually capture the outpost simply by moving your units into it, and then you have access to its beautiful, sweet resources, and it also becomes a defensive fortification. And speak of the filthy devils, those mind-sucking turds, the enslavers themselves have showed up in the middle of nowhere. Now, this is slightly problematic because enslavers are actually not only super, super annoying, but they do a lot of damage. So we're going to try to do some damage to them before they get too close to hurt us. Now, unit damage is measured by its models. So the more models an enemy unit has, the more damage it's going to be able to put on your team as well. So my guys having 5 models means we have 5 Gauss Flares to shoot at the enemy, each one doing 1.5 damage, each one having 67% accuracy, and being able to engage at range 2. It also increases, just like the tabletop, they have rapid fire. I love that, increasing their attacks at half range. This basically talking about, what I was kind of mentioning before. The fact that they do twice as much damage at point blank range. Now, units do have armor and such like that, thus giving them a slight resistance to damage. Units can, especially heroes can get items and magical relics they find on the planet that actually make them far more effective at their jobs as well. So that's something else that's pretty cool. You'll see as you explore the planet and just slowly try to clear all the nasty little buggers off of it. Like these fellas here, we're gonna try to do some damage, get our experience out of them. Every attack gets me closer to victory, and every kill gets my men closer to having their bodies again. I don't know, having solace, something like that. So, as you see, just researching 2 technologies allows us to go to Tier 2. Certain technologies do have certain requirements. The Cryptech, for example, requires the Royal Pyramid. This being because a Cryptech is another hero unit. The Necrons have at least 3 separate hero units in the form of the Necron Lord, the Cryptech, and the Destroyer Lord. I don't think they have any others, but we can go ahead and take a look-see to see if I'm wrong. No, that looks like that's it. You do have Monoliths and Transcend. I didn't even know you had a Transcendent Catan. Oh my goodness gracious, that's going to be disgusting. It's a shame we don't have a sweet, sexy Nightbringer. Now that, let me tell you, that would be absolutely glorious. But we do have all sorts of other things, like an Obelisk. Oh god, yes. And allows the Transcendent Catan and the Tesseract Vault the ability to perform a devastating strike down. So the Necrons are absolutely glorious in the late tier. And you'll actually see that the majority of factions get some pretty OP stuff. But I think the Necrons kind of fit that nice little mix of wacky, kind of crazy magical technology and just pure, like, oppressive might at the same time. Even on the tabletop, that's pretty much how they are. So I kind of dig that. And what should we do? We're just going to go... I think we're going to roll Pyramid. I'm going to be able to make a Necron Lord. A Necron Lord is a very devastating melee unit that's really going to benefit us in the long run if we can get one out. Maybe not relatively early, but still to have one at all would be really beneficial to our cause. As you can see here, some Kroot Hounds just ambushed my poor Necron warriors. And I would normally be concerned by this, but the Necrons have a wonderful ability called Necrodermis Repair, which is actually going to allow us to heal our units, bringing back 2 of our models, giving us 6 additional hit points, bringing us back up to 14, and thus making us far more dangerous to these Kroot Hounds than we were originally. Now again, with these being barbarian little hounds, it's not like there's too much they can do to really threaten us Necrons, but you know, they're just little hounds. They didn't even know. They didn't know what was going to happen. They thought they were good. Unfortunately for them, they were absolutely and totally wrong. Let's see, which else should we do? So we built us an alchemic quarry. So we could build an energy core, giving us more electricity, or we could start to generate a bit more research or create a summoning core. I think a summoning core is going to be kind of important here. Being able to actually build units is kind of a big deal, so we kind of want to do that. We'll build one here. I don't want to take up that whole slot yet. As you see, as I mentioned before, each tile has a number of slots, so a number of buildings that can be built in it. This one has 2, this one has 3, and then the main one has 3 as well. Most of the territories around me have 3. Forests generally have about 2. And different terrain types have different specialties to them. Building on Imperial ruins, for example, is actually a pretty good idea because it pretty much gives you a really heavily enforced position. These ruins actually act as a natural barrier against enemies, thus bumping you up in defenses as well. The same goes with forests. Forests act in the same manner, creating very interesting scenarios where you can have a really entrenched army. And that's actually how I recommend you do most of your battles if you can. Make sure your men have some form of cover or protection because it really makes a difference. So yeah. Alright, so we're 10 turns in. I think this is kind of a good place to end this particular video. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you continue watching these videos with me. I'm probably going to do a couple more just to really kind of talk more about the Necrons and about the game. Again, this is a very slow burn strategy game, just like most 4X strategy games tend to be. So if you're used to Civilization, you're used to that one more turn mentality and whatnot. And I think this does a pretty good job of making you feel that. But again, this isn't a review. This is just a couple of opinions being thrown out there, you know, for people to take in and enjoy and all that good stuff. Anyway, this has been Commissar Bro. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. And if you have, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you didn't like it, do not like, do not comment, and do not subscribe. Unless you really feel the urge to let me know of how displeasurable this video was for you. Anyway, this has been CB. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.